Hello there, good morning, and welcome to my little arty space on the internet at YouTube. I have other little arty spaces though, dotted around other social media. If you're interested, you can see them in the information box and find me around there. It's Thursday, it's the 27th of January, and we're already coming to the end of January. And along with that is the end of the fragments of your imagination challenge. It's only a couple more days to go. Well, 4, I think. 8, 3, 9. Yeah, 4 more days. So, sort of like coming to the end of a project or coming to the end of an event, because I take this as an event rather than a challenge, I suppose, is one of very strange feelings. It's sort of like, yes, I've done it, but there's also sort of like a sadness at the end of something as well. I always feel that way. And yeah, so, but I know there'll be other things and I'll have other times and I'll come up with other things to do. So I'm not going to give up on YouTube, just because this challenge has ended. So I'll just say thank you for all the subscriptions, likes, shares, comments. You're absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much. And again, today, if you enjoy what you see, please consider giving a like and please consider subscribing if you want to get notified of more videos when they appear, mostly daily. But if you want notifications, you have to hit that little bell button. So with no further ado, let's get to today's fragment. And it's Tripoli. Tripoli is basically it is a triangular fragment in its original form, but this one today has got the variation is this Y shape here is offset. So I've done a few other offsets to try and see how I can make it work, sort of thing, because the original one, I mean, there are many forms of Tripoli, is you find the central place of the triangle and then you draw a line from that to the center of each of the edges of that triangle. But today we're doing this a bit different. So it's, instead of going to that center of the line, we're going to offset it. Instead of going to the center of that line, we'll offset it. And I'm going to twist it. Instead of going there, I'll go there. So it's got a little skew to it, but there are lots of ways of skewing this. The first way is this way. Here I've exaggerated some of it. Hang on, let me explain. So this one, I've sort of moved these lines in the same rotation, you know, sort of like in an anti-clockwise rotation a little bit, just to twist that Y shape in the middle. Here, I've just moved them at random in different directions. This one, I've shifted the central point, and that gives a skewed Y shape as well, in a different kind of way. It depends how you move it. This one, I moved it and then aimed these for other places than the central space, and I got a T shape instead. Not happy with that one. This one, it went strange, so I put a big circle there, and it's almost like a well variation there. And from this one, instead, I put, instead of a dot or a circle in the center, I put a little triangle. And I'll show you what I did. Is instead of having this triangle pointing towards the center of the lines, as well as skewing it, you're moving it, I also twisted it a little bit. So it's like that, and I use these lines here to aim those lines at the center. So that's another way of doing it. I quite like this one because it's a lot easier to work out how you're going to twist and turn the lines, especially if you want a consistency in in the fragment when you add it to a reticulum, if you're going to make a gridded pattern. That's my opinion. Take it or leave it. But that can work. So let's have a look. So I'm going to, I'll add a triangle. It's really, it needs to be that way. That works better. I think that works much better. You can twist it, but if you keep it straight, you still get this asymmetry of lines. But I say straight. What am I talking about? The triangle that you need inside the triangle is inverted in this case, and that allows these lines to flow off it to create a well kind of form. It's not really well, it is a well. What happens if I pop the, let's pop the triangle this way. So that's fairly much in the centre. So let's shift it to one side and away from the centre a bit. And we get that. So that's another possibility. It's not too important. The other way of doing this is to skew this and draw perpendicular lines from the point of that triangle. That actually is quite nice. I didn't expect it to be, but it is. Let's try again. And with ones like this, you can end up with two of these lines on one side instead of one line on each side, if it makes sense. So that's quite an interesting variation. It's, you know, did I do one over here that was like that? Not quite. Could have. So that's another possibility. You just pop one in here. So if we go with this one, we could have offset, offset, and perhaps another offset there where it's almost on that line. You can exaggerate it as much as you like or as little as you like, even to the point where have a look, pop it off, and let's do two that way. So that's a very uneven kind of one. Of course, there are then things to be done with these spaces. So I'm just putting a simple Artwyrd shape in here. Because I'm using a fine pen, I'm just going to cross-hatch fill these shapes. It would have been quicker for me to pick my pen up and do it properly, I think, but gives an idea of the feel, the difference in this. So that's quite nice. I think I'd fill the central bit in. This one I'm going to add aura lines there like you would with well, and we could actually get another one in this case. That is an evenly spaced one, but it's a nicely evenly spaced. It's quite nice. I'll get my other pen. Let's fill these completely with black, the central ones. So that works quite nicely. This one, there's one here, and I thought, oh, it reminds me, it would be really quite pleasant if we treated it in the Enzeppel kind of way, where you kind of try and squash a squishy ball inside the shape. that actually looks quite nice. I like that one. Okay. These are straight lines, so let's just do some auraing and perhaps continue to aura until we get down to a tiny space that we can fill with black. I'm not worried about whether I've got the same number of auras in each space. I just want that space, and I am going to go and really thicken those original lines there so it gives some form to it. So that's quite nice. Okay, what else could we do? On that one, I'm going to add some lines, perhaps just on one side, because I think it could get a bit confusing to do it all the way around. But that was you could do. Could use a different colour pen for each side, or a different width for each side. Okay. There really is all kinds of things that can be done. We can add some stamens around the corners of the triangle, so we've got more petalish kinds of shapes, and where these lines meet as well, and then something like that in there. So we turn them into flowery things. This one's very structural. I think I'm tempted to leave this one as it is for now. So I think seeing how these go together would be quite interesting. It'd be quite interesting to work with this in a very random kind of way. I'll come, if I've got space, I'll leave some space and I'll have a look at doing that. That one just begs for this kind of feeling. In the middle of these, some of these, I'm going to pop perhaps a dot in the centre as well to draw the eye there. Okay, this one's really interesting, in a strange kind of way. Difference auras make. Okay, so this is with a triangle. You know what I'm going to do next? Let's have a look at a square. The analogy for a square of this would be a dot in the middle and lines that go to equal parts of the sides. So let's have a look at doing this in an uneven way. So that's having a line going to each side. 4 lines, 4 sides. So let's have a look at doing 3 lines in a square. That's possible. And these are all starting from the middle. But what about if we do 5 lines in a square? We get different shapes. This leads to a quite floral pattern. I'll come back to that in a moment. And with these, I've put this point in the centre. So what about if we pop this off centre and draw the lines to roughly the middle of the edges of the square? We get an unevenness that way. And if we draw this off centre, and perhaps do a Y shape. That's a fairly regular Y shape, isn't it? So let's have a look at doing something that's a bit more exaggerated. That would work. and off center and do the 5 lines randomly spaced. I'll come back to these in a moment, possibly. These ones, like this, are the shapes. Again, it's doing kind of an enzeppel. If you're familiar with the enzeppel, trying to squash a round ball in, or just rounding these corners of this space. Like this, and we end up with lovely petal shapes. I think this becomes the tangle floors. No, it's not floors. I've seen this as a tangle pattern, but I can't remember its name. And it's actually a shape I quite like. So I'm just going to pop some little teardrop shapes there to bring out that flowery kind of thing going on. And I could do that with each and every one of these, but I'm not going to. These are very architectural. So I'm just going to do a very simple aura on this one. Same kind of, it's not exactly the same arrangement of lines, but it gives a completely different feel. And then with these, if I thicken the lines at the top and to the left, and shadow will help with this, it'll look like we've got holes in this structure, and shadowing can help to bring almost a, these being the high point, if you like, as well, or a lower point, or put shadow and highlight with them. Okay, let's have a look at this one. I think with this one, let's try this, where I'm going from this line to the corner here, so I'm auraing or echoing this outside shape, and here I'm doing this within, and it's kind of a weaving, kind of. Get that kind of thing going on, which is quite nice. I've used this before. Okay, let's have a look. This one, I'm going to choose one of these here. Let's choose this section, and I'm going to do betweed in there. Betweed, you start at the point of the bounding lines, these lines that define this shape, and you draw along that line, and then you gently curve away. The idea is to try and get the thicknesses of these lines here to be equal, but roughly equal is fine. And we're just going to fill this shape. I've gone from the corner. I've got stuck here. Let me turn it, because I think, is this how it's then done? Yeah, because I've got to a straight line here, so I'm going to betweed this space here. Yeah, that works. So like that. So that's a different kind of feel. That there reminds me of the old paper Christmas decorations, you know, the baubles or the things that would hang from ceilings that were folded and stuck together and so on, which is quite fun. Betweed is one of those patterns that does tend to confound me from time to time, but oddly that shape has actually helped me understand a bit more about it. So yeah, and I do quite like these variants where we've got just one section filled in and 2 left blank. With this one, I think I'm going to add not quite aura-ing lines in terms of being parallel to this original line, but just drawing them so they edge out, create little wedges there, and that gives a bit more of a definition of these spaces. And I'm going to fill one in with print on, because I haven't used print on for a while. Little spirals. Last night I was chatting with friends on Zoom, and one of them is from Colombia and now lives in Wales, and is hoping to, well, not hoping, is going to be returning back to Colombia when a flat they've bought is completed. And so we're talking about Colombia and so on, and topic of Mesoamerican archaeology came up, and I was given the name of a couple of places to look at. So, you know, the websites were shared over Zoom so we could all have a look, and oh my goodness, how beautiful those things were. But there was somewhere in the Colombian Amazon that had been recently discovered where there were rock paintings, and you look and you go, oh my gosh, these patterns, they were thousands and thousands of years old. I think 12,500 years old, they estimated it, if I remember rightly. And you think, we're still using these patterns today. They're patterns that children draw instinctively. It's patterns that adults draw instinctively. It's the patterns and shapes that I love so much. And there were zigzags and square, you know, sort of waves, squared waves instead of pointy waves, you know, triangular waves, and the curly waves that were there, patterns of dots, spirals, hands, you know, images of animals and other things. It was just amazing. You just think, yeah, these just come out, you know, they're shapes and patterns that seem to enthrall us. Not just that, they sort of connect us back thousands and thousands, and sometimes hundreds of thousands of years into the past. And it's just an amazingly wonderful thing to see and to behold. I just absolutely love it. So yeah, so something else for me to look into, and I've got a Pinterest board for, I need to change the name to Mesoamerican Art. But just absolutely brilliant. So those are square variations, and I'm not going to spend ages drawing loads and loads of squares, because I think we get the idea, as do I. I think this one's my fondest, this one and this one. This has potential, so does this, but I think the potential of them will come out in a grid pattern more than in individual fragments. And the triangles, these are fun. I do have a fondness for the petal shaped ones. And this one, just so simple. My favourite way of constructing these is the use of triangles and drawing lines along the edges. That way, I do have to say that. This I would find a lot easier to replicate in a grid pattern, for example, in the same way I would with the, you know, ones like this. I haven't done that for the square, have I, where I've popped a square inside and perhaps off centre, and to do the same thing where you draw lines from that square, the edge, and off to the, you know, from follow the edge out, but you sort of have to rotate it, or, you know, go in the same, you couldn't go that way because the lines can't cross at a corner, if that makes any sense. And I'm sure we could use other shapes in a square as well. So let's pop just a random triangle in, and that would work as well. So bigger squares, bigger shapes. I could have drawn a bigger triangle to show this as well. So let's just draw a triangle at random here. Oh no, I've just done that wrong. Yeah, completely wrong. 0 out of 10 there, Angela. It's okay. We've created something that kind of works there. What did I do wrong? That way I should have gone this way and then that way. So that's an oopsie. So there, that way, and then that way. I just think that is the easy, but they all have their charm, they all have their value, don't they? Okie dokes. Let's go for this. Let's the leaf shape, and let's pop a triangle in here. So that way, and that way. So that's an easy way of doing it. Oh, a circle. I'm going to pop a diamond shape in my circle. And although these lines are straight, or could be straight, you can also curve them as they come off. So that's another way of doing that. There's a very uneven circle. So let's pop a different number of points in. Pentagon. Again. So that would work as well. It'll give us that offset. I do like having these with these spaces in the middle. You could make these shapes as small as you like or as big as you like in the centre. So there I've got a tiny little pentagon. That works as well. Okay, talking of pentagons, of course it's going to work in a pentagon. Once again, we could just choose any shape to pop in the middle of it. So if I take a triangle, triangle. So I'm taking this idea of an offset triangle from today's fragment, but putting it into a different shape. And then if we do another pentagon, and perhaps do an offset, having to think about how to draw a pentagon and do the same thing, then that will work that way quite nicely as well. Okay, I've done a leaf shape. So in a teardrop shape it'll work. What about in a random kind of shape? Well, of course it will. Just pop that triangle in anywhere, or dot, and just draw that Y-shaped line, that kind of way. Of course, the same thing can be done. The nice thing about square fragments, though, like this, where you've got the 4 regions, is that we can use this as that opportunity to add a pattern, a texture in sections that are opposite to one another. Which is really quite nice, and I'm going to make a feature of that, mirror it. So that's quite nice. I like that. And so let's do that in the middle of a so random shaped square. Like like so. And let me have a look. Let's do that between on these sections. On that one, and then the opposite one. There we are. So that creates an interesting shape or pattern there. So that'll be fun. Be really interesting actually to fit to shadow and fill in that one. I don't know what my hands are doing here. They're just doing weird things today. Everything's doing weird things for me. Okay, I've just forgotten what I was going to do because I said, oh, these could be quite interesting. Yeah, I know what it was. Just to look at these triangles and how we could connect them in a reticular. So I'm drawing some triangles in. I'm creating the reticular before I add any patterns to it, because I find this a lot easier to do this way. I can get very confused if I do one thing before I approach another part of doing this. To create this, I am drawing a triangle. I'm picking a side. I'm drawing a line to aura that one, leaving a gap between them. Drawing the next triangle. And then I'm going round so I create a circle of triangles. Trying to get 6 of them because you get a kind of hexagonal shape. And we get our grid in this kind of manner and fashion. So let's have a look at this. Now then, how was I going to do this? I think I was going to start with quite a largish dot here and then have this Y shape. Pop this one here, and then I'm going to think of this as being a straight line here, so I want to go from this to this. Then I can offset that dot and do an offset Y shape, offset the dot here, and work my way round, gradually connecting these together. And then when you get to where these join, you need to join this line. You can see what I'm doing. I'm finding it hard to describe things. So that's almost a T shape there, but I'm fine with that. Again, take this line, start here, put the others in, go to the next one. This one will join there. So we need lines going to the other sides. And here, I've got a line here. So let's go to this point and then that point. I'm joining them. So there feels like there's some continuity. And let's just draw that one in a bit wonky. Let me see if I can get, I will do this. leave this one and go this way round. Show you why in a moment. Oh, that one's gone a bit skew-whiffy there, but that's fine. That one, there and there. And then this one, I've got lines all the way around, so I'll just choose where I'm going to put my dots. I'll join those up, and then that one. And then it looks a lot like broken glass, but that is quite fun to do. And you get a completely random pattern. And I don't know what I do with this. You know, the ones I particularly like are these ones that are the Zentangle kinds of things, where we squash these shapes in. It ends up looking a bit like crazy paving almost, unless we turn these into petal shapes, which is always a possibility. But anything you can fill these spaces with, or any way of embellishing them, is fine. This is just one of my favourites. Actually, I haven't drawn this in a drawing for a little while. These would make great fragments for Morisot as well. Any of the shapes would. This one's an unusual shape, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a weird centre to it, but that's fine. I'm going to pop little black teardrops coming off from the centre point into our little rounded areas to make them look like petals, so that works quite nicely. The one thing I wanted to do, came to me as I was thinking about this, is that there are other ways of adding pattern that aren't just lines. So I could add lines like this, and then we could add auras to them like veils. And indeed, we could start with these leaf shapes and gradually perhaps add a couple more auras to them in that kind of way. So that's quite fun. The other thing that could be done is we can off-center these, but we really can off-center them, going to the points instead. Perhaps that's not so wibbly wobbly, but the same can be done in other shapes. So if I do this and create these shapes going to the corners, we get this very off-center kind of flower. Can also do, perhaps I'm going to have a circle there, and we have a look. Join things that kind of way, a bit clunky, but I haven't drawn that very well, but I think you get the idea. Again, in a square, we could actually pop these in, sort of like arranged at the same point along each side. So this distance is the same as this distance, this one and this one, and then put our central point in, or skew width, or asymmetrically. So that could be a different way of constructing these. Same with, you know, we take one of these shapes and perhaps pop a circle in, then we can get a fair few of these shapes going to the edges. Sea urchin. It is like a wonky sea urchin, but I think we get the idea here, don't we? So plenty of ideas to work with. I got things, I'm trying to think, how can I create something here? I think with this one I'm going to aura these, but in one section I'm going to fill it in with one of my favourite patterns, it seems to be. Good old diva dance. So that's quite nice. And then perhaps tempted to do another one with lines. The other option as well is to, we've done straight lines here, but is to do curved lines in a well fashion like this. So that's more than possible for all of these. Yeah, you can see the square one there. And then with these you can do exactly the same as you would with any other well variant. It's the idea of having this shape, I've put 3 in there, and perhaps creating these petal shapes in there. It's a completely different kind of arrangement of the petals or the propeller blades, but it does work quite nicely. This one reminds me of part of an ear of corn, almost, so we could leave it like, put it like that. So that's a possibility. There's all of these possibilities for embellishments. Things like that. Possibly like that. Gee, that's quite nice. I like that. I haven't come across things like this before. I do like that. So instead of doing the petals going this way, or whichever way it is, that way, in a well fashion, I've just, instead of swooping them out, I've swept them back inwards. Looks a bit like a spider's web, or the beginning of a spider's web. So that's quite interesting. And if we pop some semicircles, which again is something I haven't done on these, do just one side, then we get an interesting shape here. We can aura it and do crescent moon, so that's quite nice. We could do an aura knot kind of thing going, no, aura knot is not aura, is it aura knot? can't remember what this one is called, but you aura that inner circle, then you aura each line, inner circle, aura each line, and you keep doing this until you fill the space up and you get this lovely woven kind of pattern going on. Like that. And you can do that all the way round, but I'm just going to do one section, so that's a nice way of using this. It's having these very distinctive straight lines that makes the kinds of patterns that we can use quite different, and having the space to do things as well. Okay, let's have a look at this one, because I'm going to do just a half one. I created the circular aura here, but as I go along it's getting bigger and bigger, as you perhaps would have expected. I wasn't quite sure how it's going to work out. I often don't have the foresight to see how things are going to work out. I have to try them. So that's very interesting. You've got one shape almost curling away behind the other one. This does bear playing with far more, you know that. Okay, I'm hunting for some tortillons. Okay, let's have a look. I got one here that is, that'll do. It's quite fine. And let's use a different kind of pastel to what I've been doing recently. Oh, I've got a violet one, fab. So I am going to add some shadow to these to help to bring out a sense of dimension here, I think. Does that work? You'll have to tell me, because at the moment I'm not really paying much attention. Okay, let's have a look here. Okay, that works. That helps to bring out that. Okay, I'm using the shadow here as part of the pattern. So I'm repeating where it is around this shape. This chalk pastel I'm using isn't a magic one that changes colour with pressure or whatever. I'm just using a mucky tortillon, so there's some greens and blues coming off here, but it's fine. So that is interesting. This one is going to be an interesting one. How do we do this? I think it's putting shadow. I'm going to pop shadow right down the middle. I'm not going to try to get the individual parts. I'm just going to do it down the middle because eventually that's what it would be. So that's quite fun. Others. I said this one here could be quite interesting. We pop shadow so it looks like we've got holes in this one. This betweed is interesting, and again I think this one looks like it's actually sticking upwards, so I'll put shadow at the corners here and leave the central parts highlighted. That will help with it, the idea of it bulging. These ones, let's do the classic of popping shadow around the outside of that shape with the print on bin. Creates a kind of pillow effect. All right, this one is so interesting. I think I'm going to pop shadow underneath these lines that are bare, if you understand what I'm saying. See how that works. So that will be quite nice there. Okey-dokes. This one, I think I will pop that shadow down the centre a bit again, but I'm also going to pop shadow around a lot of it this side, not so much down here. Let's have a look and see how that will work. Possibly like a hole in the paper, possibly. This one is an intriguing one. Let's have a look if I pop shadow around these. I've said this before and I'll say it again, using chalk pastels to do this is lovely because you don't have to get everything right up to that line. You can get it as close as you can and then let the paper stump or tortilla do the work of moving that colour where you'd like it. And I am going to add a fair amount around the outside edges here to get that feeling of a hole that we're looking into. Don't want to move this out too far, but we do need shadow from it. So there we go, perhaps a little bit there. Alright, are there any others that... This one, I think I'd be tempted to pop shadow where these lines are. Feeling of folding, perhaps. Okay. Any others that I'm desperate to add shadow to? My Diva Dance. This one again, I think I'd do outside on the outside edges of this particular shape where the Diva Dance is, and just let it look like it's curved. Okay. I think that is as much as I'd like to do for these. I can see that I've got more options available to me here with more possibilities than I've got space for, and ways of adding embellishments and patterns. What I thought, I do this every time, don't I? I say this. I thought that this may have been a quite an interesting pattern, you know, sort of like, oh, what can I do with this? But it turns out to be quite interesting, especially when you take this idea of these off-center or rotated slightly or asymmetric in some ways as well, Y shape, and pop it into other shapes, or use that idea in other shapes. And my favourites, I think I like this one. This one have intrigued me as well. That one's worked out quite nicely, so is that. That's nice. There's quite a lot of them here that I really, really like. I like my weird sea urchin as well. It's a fossil that's been squashed. But there's a lot of possibility in this that perhaps I haven't been able to see yet. But they're all starting points. And that was the one I was going to add shadow. I wanted to add some shadow too. So remember I said about the you can see almost like there's these lines, this line here that's formed where these well, we've got this overlapping, this weaving going on. And I think that's the perfect place to pop that shadow, because it makes it feel like it's been folded. We've got a fold there. Well, that's how it feels to me, or how it appears to me. So that was fun to do. That's the other one. So lots of possibilities. So I hope you'll give it a go. If you do, and you post it on social media, don't forget to find me and tag me in. I think it's just Angela Porter on Facebook, but on all my other social media it's Artwyrd. So it'd be great to see. So until we meet again, take care, look after yourselves, and find time to be creative. Bye-bye for now. Bye.